What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video, and today we're going to be going over the Magicka Nightblade DPS. So the Magicka Nightblade has come has had quite a journey, let's just say that, on the DPS train over the past few patches. It was, about a year ago, one of the strongest DPS specs in the game for Magicka DPS, but it has slowly slid its way down to being among the worst Magicka DPS in Scalebreaker and elsewhere just 1 or 2 patches ago. But now, with Dragonhold, it's sort of seeing another resurgence here. It is now counted among one of the top Magicka DPS in the game. So a lot of changes have happened with Magicka Nightblades to kind of help facilitate that. Two of the big changes are the fact that Twisting Path got a buff, and then their bow proc now lasts for 40 seconds, up from 20 seconds, basically allowing you to use more spambles instead of just focusing on renewing your bow proc. So those two things combined, along with the kind of overall general changes to DPS, has kind of elevated Magicka Nightblades again to one of the top, if not the top, Magicka DPS specs in the game right now, up there with Necromancers. So just like the rest of our build videos, we will not be going any over gear options. That will be in the Magicka DPS gear video, which should be popping up in the upper right hand corner right now. So if you are interested in knowing what gear I am running for this build and gear you might want to run in other sort of scenarios, you can go ahead and pause this video, check out that video, and then come back here. In this video, we'll be going over just the skills as well as the rotation for the Magicka Nightblade. So with all that said and done, let's go ahead and get started here with our front bar. So on our front bar, we have Impale, Swallow Soul, Degeneration, Merciless Resolve, Inner Light, and Soul Harvest. If you're having trouble sustaining, you can swap Soul Harvest for the other morph, which is Incapacitating Strike, so that way you get the Reeve passive. But you will end up doing a little bit less damage because it does deal disease damage, and that is not affected by any of your CPs, or at the very least, not a lot of your CPs. So I personally have not found any issues sustaining with Magicka Nightblade, so I'm sticking with Soul Harvest, but if you do want additional sustain, then you can go with Incapacitating Strike. Now, I like to use Swallow Soul as my spamble because I like the self-heal that it provides, but you can also use something like Elemental Weapon or Force Pulse instead. The advantage of running Swallow Soul is that it also provides an 80% additional max Magicka using the Magicka Flood passive. So you don't have to, swap out an ability running Crippling Grasp, for example, on the front bar in order to get this 8% because it's already built into your spammable. As for Degeneration, this is here for the max Magicka it is providing, as well as the Magicka regen, but it's also one of the stronger single target dots that you can have in the game right now. On our back bar, we have Twisting Path, Unstable Wall, Barbed Trap, which you can swap out for Channel Acceleration if you have access to the Sigil Order line and you have to play at ranged. Barbed Trap does require you to be within melee range. The radius is only 2.5 meters, so you have to be fairly close in order to get the Barbed Trap off. If you don't have access to the Sigil Order line, then instead you can run the other morph of Barbed Trap, which is Lightweight Beast Trap if you have to play at ranged. This does allow you to throw the trap out. You do need to be pretty good with your aim because it is still maintains a 2.5 meter radius. And it only lasts for 10 seconds, so you will have to cast it more often. Let's just keep that in mind if you're running Lightweight Beast Trap. Then we have Siphoning Attacks, and then we have Mystic Orb, which you could also use Crippling Grasp as well. Mystic Orb is just going to be a little bit stronger, especially on bosses with very large hitboxes, as well as trash pulls, just because you have the possibility of getting all 20 ticks going if you were to fight a very large boss, like the dragons in Sunspire. Then for our back bar ultimate, we still have Soul Harvest here. That way we can maintain the additional Hemorrhage passive here. So we get the additional 10% crit damage while we're on our back bar here. Plus it does give us some additional crit chance through the Pressure Points passive. So in terms of other abilities, I've already kind of covered most of them, but there are a few others that I didn't touch upon yet. Let's see here. Under the Siphoning line, if you want an AoE spamble, you could run Sap Essence, so that also acts as a self-heal as well as a heal for everybody else. It is potentially useful. You can just use this in place of Swallow Soul for trash fights. Not a bad option for trash fights, but you have quite a few sort of AoE attacks already, with Twisting Path being very strong as well as Mystic Orbs. But this does help out with trash if you're able to use Sap Essence. Under the Destro Staff line, I talked about using Force Pulse as a spamble, but you might also want to pick up Crushing Shock instead. So if you are responsible for interrupting anything that's at range, so for example, interrupters in Asylum hard mode, so you'd be using something like Crushing Shock instead of Swallow Soul. You will obviously see a DPS drop by running Crushing Shock, but sometimes you just need to do it, make those sacrifices, personal DPS sacrifices, for the good of the group. If you need to run a shield at all, you can run either Morph of Annulment, Harness Magicka, or Dampen Magic. Now, which ability you decide to give up for the shield is kind of up to you. I like to have my shield on my front bar as much as I can, but I also am used to running it on my back bar as well. You could replace either Degeneration or Mystic Orb with your shield ability if you want to go that route. You do get a little bit of a heal through Siphoning attacks, which might help out, but it does require you to pretty much be on point with your Light Weaving. Plus, you already have heal with Swallow Soul as a spamble, so it might not necessarily be necessary to have a shield, but it is always nice to have that option there. If you want some more clave damage, you can always run Soul Splitting Trap, so you can use this in place of Degeneration for Trash Pull, so you use something like Sap Essence and Soul Splitting Trap here to kind of optimize yourself for trash fights. We have a lot of enemies you gotta hit. Soul Trap by itself is not going to be quite as strong as Degeneration in terms of actual damage it provides, but it is pretty decent nonetheless. Let's see here. We already talked about potentially using Elemental Weapon as a spamble. It's going to be pretty similar DPS to Swallow Soul. And then beyond that, that's pretty much it for all the abilities you could run here. So again, in order to just kind of summarizing things really fast, you have Impale, you have a spammable, which I recommend Swallow Soul, but you can also do Ele Weapon or Force Pulse. This is a flex spot with Degeneration. You can run a shield or Sap Essence or Soul Splitting Trap or something like that for trash fights. Merciless Resolve you want to keep on hand. Inner Light definitely want to keep on hand. Soul Harvest, yes, on the front bar. Then on the back bar, pretty much these first four, and then you have a flex spot here on the 5th slot here, and then Soul Harvest again. Now, why aren't we running Shooting Star on the front bar, you might ask? Well, that's because Soul Harvest does have a cast time, and we are using Soul Harvest as our main ultimate, so we're not going to be using any other ultimate, really. And so that cast time makes it a little bit tricky to just run it on the back bar, because you can't bar swap while you're in the cast time, so it's easier just to run it on the front bar here. You still do get some additional crit chance while you have Soul Harvest slotted. You get additional 2% crit chance, so it's not like you're giving up a bunch of DPS, but it is something to kind of be mindful of. The cast time was added in quite a few patches ago, just because people were complaining about how the ability was overpowered in PvP. But that's pretty much all for skills. Now let's go ahead and talk about the rotation. So I'm going to move my 21 million dummy parse right here. Alright, so on this 6 million dummy, we're just going to go over the rotation really fast. So for those of you guys who are used to playing Magicka Nightblades, comes as no surprise that the rotation pretty much hasn't changed in the fact that it is still a dynamic rotation. The concept of the Magicka Nightblade rotation is to maximize how many bow procs you can get off. And you pretty much need to light weave. So one of the things I highly recommend pretty much any DPS, but particularly if you want to play Nightblade, is learn how to light weave. If you don't light weave, your DPS potential goes down drastically as a Magicka Nightblade. So in terms of what I mean by dynamic rotation, after 5 light attacks, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you get the bow proc to go off. And you want to get that bow proc off pretty much right away. So what that means is when you're doing all your dots, so let's go ahead and just do all of our dots, for example. There is really no set rotation because you will want to get that bow proc off right away. So here, for example, I'm breaking my back bar rotation in order to get my bow proc off. And that's kind of the whole gist of the rotation. You're kind of centering it around getting that bow proc off. Another thing you might notice is that I don't actually do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 then bow proc. I actually do 1, 2, 3, 4 light attack right into the bow proc that way. And so that pretty much just maximizes the amount of bow proc that you're able to get off. So again, once you hit 4 stacks, you're going to want to swap to the bar, your front bar, So let's say I'm on my back bar, you swap to your front bar, and you do your light attack right into the bow proc. That'll basically saves you a global cooldown, so you get more bow procs off that way. So that's pretty much the entire rotation. Please don't ask me to write this down because I will just tell you that there is no written rotation. It's a dynamic rotation. The rotation is constantly going to be changing based on the timing of your dots. And you'll see this when we do a 21 dummy parse, that there is really no pattern to the actual rotation itself. It's just a matter of keeping up with all the dots, using the ball proc once it goes off, and then just keeping on renewing your dots as you need to. When you don't need to renew dots, obviously you just use your Spamble, Swallow Soul. Now when we get into execute range, which is 25% or lower, you're going to drop a couple of dots. So you're going to drop Degeneration, you're going to drop Mystic Orb, and you're only going to maintain Barbed Trap, Unstable Wall, and Twisting Path. I would also recommend maintaining Siphoning Attacks as well for the sustain, and then Merciless Resolve. You will be maintaining Merciless Resolve, and you will still use the bow proc just because the bow proc is pretty strong in execute still. Beyond that, though, you're just swapping out your Spamble for Impale. So, with all that's said and done, let's do a 21 million W parse so you guys can get an idea of the actual rotation. I will try to narrate this throughout the parse as I see fit, so you guys can get a sense of what's going on. And then bow proc. You guys got to get really used to that. So 4 light bow proc. The only time you won't do that is if your soul harvest is up, because you do want to hit that soul harvest. That way you get the additional damage on that bow proc. You can see here a lot of bar swapping. Even though we do have Soul Harvest on the back bar, we're not going to use it on the back bar because of that cast time. You might see the cast time for Surrender show up just for a split second when I use the ultimate, and that is the cast time of Soul Harvest. Yeah, missing quite a few weaves here. While Nightblades haven't been hit quite as hard with the sustain changes as other classes in Dragonhold, it is still noticeable the change in sustain. You still do want to maintain Siphoning Attacks as much as you can. In terms of what dots you want to maintain, if you have multiple dots that are running out, you need to decide which one to prioritize. Unstable Wall first for the Maelstrom effect. Then Twisting Path, because it is a strong dot. And then Mystic Orb if you're running that. Then Siphoning Attacks. You have to make sure to let Siphoning Attacks run completely out, otherwise you will not get the full resource return from it. So if you activate a little bit early, you actually don't get the full resource return, so make sure you're letting it run completely out before you renew Siphoning Attacks. We're getting close to execute, so like I mentioned, We're going to drop Degeneration and Mystic Orb. We're going to maintain our bow proc, Unstable, Twisting Path, and Siphoning Attack. At least let me leave properly. But I'm just going to spam Impale here. Not worry about other dots here. Just get as much spambled out as I can. And there we go. So I think I was a little bit too close to the 6 million, so my orbs were hitting the 6 million dummy a little bit, so we just gotta make sure to get out of combat with that. It shouldn't affect our overall DPS numbers though, just gotta make sure we select the right one. Alright, so I am not as good as Magicka Nightblade as I am on some other classes, so that's why the DPS here is lower than it normally should be, so only 79.8k. I have seen Magicka Nightblades hit upwards of around, I think 84, 85 is the highest I've seen. Maybe 87 or so. I have to double check, but I'm not the best Magicka Nightblade right now. You did see that I missed quite a few light weaves here and there, especially towards the end in Execute. But it is still definitely one of the strongest Magicka specs in the game right now. Mainly because they have just an easy time sustaining the overall rotation. You're able to run a weapon damage enchant on the back bar, no issue at all, with a flame damage enchant on the front bar as well. So really easy to sustain because of that siphoning attacks. But that concludes this build video. If you guys have any questions at all about the build, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. Hope you guys found this video informative, and I will see you guys in the next dungeon.